Hello everybody, and welcome to the latest in our series of webinars where we have been looking at different aspects of the disease of dementia. And today I'm very pleased to have with me two ladies from New Zealand who are going to be talking about the situation in New Zealand, but also specifically looking at how VSED might help someone with dementia at the end of their lives. Because the law in New Zealand, like most other places, makes it very difficult for someone with that disease to access an assisted death. So today I'm very pleased, as I said, I have Anne David from, now correct me if I'm wrong, but is it Death with Dignity New Zealand? No,
It's End of Life Choice
End
Society,
of
Peter.
End of Life Choices Society. Sorry, Anne. And I have Treza Gallogly, who is from Swansong, New Zealand. And she has also recently been elected chair of the End of Life Doula Alliance of New Zealand. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And maybe if I could start with you, if you could maybe just set the scene for us and explain what exactly is the law in New Zealand.
With pleasure. Thank you, Peter. Um, New Zealand has had an assisted dying law in place since 1921, so we have just completed the first 3 years. Like many places in the world, it's extremely restricted with a number of eligibility criteria. One of these is that the person's death must be foreseeable within 6 months. And the other is that the person needs to be mentally competent right up to the very last minute when the doctor asks the final question, are you still sure you want to receive this medication? So that, of course, excludes completely anybody who's suffering with dementia, because no one with dementia at the time of their death is fully mentally competent. And nevertheless, the number of dementia sufferers is increasing in New Zealand, as it is everywhere in the world. So we need other mechanisms in the absence of a change of law, which we are still fighting for. And we believe that VSED may be one of these mechanisms whereby a person who's suffering with dementia can escape the fate of those last stages, the ones where they are mentally incompetent and don't understand what they're doing, if they wish. So it might be a good time to just explain in a bit more detail what VSED is.
Please.
VSED stands for voluntarily stopping eating and drinking. In a nutshell, causing one's own death by self-starvation and self-dehydration over a period of time. The advantage of VSED is that it is legal in just about everywhere in the world. I've never heard of a single jurisdiction where it's not legal. So anybody can do it at any time. The reason that people don't do it is, of course, that it is grim and difficult, especially the dehydration part. And people need help. Sometimes they can get family help, very occasionally. They can get help from a hospice or a hospital. But increasingly, we are starting to investigate another option, which is assistance from an end-of-life doula, that we think might be a possibility, and that I understand is what we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. And Teresa, I'm very glad that you're with us here today, and you are an end-of-life doula. So
That's right.
perhaps you could maybe tell us a bit more about what the role is. Is it a medical role? Is it a social role? Enlighten
Yeah,
us.
sure. So thanks for having me on. First of all, I'm delighted to be able to contribute to this conversation. As Peter said, I'm an end-of-life doula. As doulas, we support people through their life transitions. So you may have heard of birth doulas, who help a mother to bring a new baby into the world. I work with people at end of life, and we're sometimes called death doulas. So it's a non-medical role, and I need to make that really clear. Doulas do not provide any medical support. We work alongside the health services that are in place for a person at end of life, and we fill the gaps. We work in a holistic way, helping people. We go into a person's home and see where they're at on their journey. We help them with practical things if they're struggling. The biggest things we find with people at end of life is their spirituality and their emotional care, and being able to hold space for the conversations that are important about what people are afraid of when they're dying, and enable them to really know their options and be able to use their voice for either accepting certain cares or certain treatments, or saying, I just don't want to do that anymore. I know I'm nearing the end of my life and I want to make the most of the time I've got left. And we also help a lot with people to make decisions around how they want their death to look, like where they want to be, usually at home is the answer to that, and what they want to happen after their death in terms of body care at home, options for funerals or ceremonies after death, all sorts of things that people just have no idea about. So, as I say, the doula role is non-medical and covering pretty much anything that needs to be done. And I think one of the important things too is that we work with anybody, no matter what their race or creed. We provide non-judgmental care. Mostly, in my own experience, I've worked with people who are dying naturally. But I have had experience as well working with people who have chosen what we call assisted dying here that Anne was talking about, which I think is called MAID in a lot of places in the world. And I've also supported a lady who chose VSED as a way to end her life under her own choice. So, yeah.
Thank you, Treza. Thank you for that explanation of what an end-of-life doula does. You made for me two important points. One is that it's a non-medical role, but you yourself do have a medical background. You were once a nurse. I would have thought personally that it would be helpful to have a nurse, but from what you're telling us, you work alongside various types of health workers, not as a health worker in your role as an end-of-life doula. And in case anybody's wondering how we spell doula, it's DOULA, if you want to look it up on Google.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry, Anne, go on.
You were going to explain the origin of the word. Shall I let you do that first, and then I'll go on to my second point that you raised that I thought was interesting and we should comment on?
Thanks, Anne. Sure. Doula is a Greek word, and it means person of service. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. And the other point that you made, I think, was helping people make decisions about what kind of treatment they may wish to accept and not accept. As we know, anybody can reject treatment that they don't want at any time. And while they're still mentally competent, they can just simply say to a doctor, thank you for offering them more chemo, but I don't want any. That's fine. And if they are not mentally competent, they can pre-sign an advance directive to say, under certain circumstances, I would not want this, that, or the other treatment. But none of that is VSED, is it? VSED is an awful lot more active. It is deliberately making one's own decision to do something that is guaranteed to cause their own death, provided they could carry on to the end.
That's right.
That's correct, isn't it? Now, Treza, you mentioned that you did help a lady to VSED. And from what you've told me previously, it was a positive experience for you, for her, for the family. Can you describe for us what her particular circumstances were? She wasn't a lady with dementia, was she?
No, no, she wasn't. And just before we get into that, can I just go back a little step just to answer the last couple of questions? Just touching on my experience as a nurse. I was a trained general nurse and I did pediatrics actually when I was younger. But then I went away and did all sorts of other things during my life and moved right away from nursing. And in answer to your question, I think it does inform my work. And I think that empathy that I have for people who aren't well and my natural instinct to walk alongside people and to try and help them does inform what I do as a doula and has actually led me to do this work. And I think it does help with what I do, but I just want to make it clear that not all doulas are nurses or have nursing history. A lot of doulas come to this work really with a wish to bring their hearts and their minds to the work, often through experiences they've had with death through their life, in order to make a better end of life experience for people. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that.
And could I maybe just ask a quick question, just out of curiosity? How do people find you, Teresa? I mean, doulas, I would say, are not a rare breed, but certainly I wasn't aware of them before I started sort of working in this area. So how do your patients, your clients, how do they find you?
With difficulty, because we're only just starting in New Zealand, and this is a profession that has been becoming more understood in different places around the world, like the UK and Canada, certain states of America. And there are very few of us yet as well, although we are scattered around the country. We have set up the Alliance so that we are spending a lot of time promoting the name and the role so that people understand. And we're hoping that as we progress and as we're working with our clients and our communities, that the hospices and the palliative care teams in hospitals begin to understand what we're doing and the importance of this role and how we can work together, because we're not coming in to take their job and they can't do what we do because they can't be involved with the families as much. So we're hoping that it will just grow naturally as we move forward, and people just need to hear about the word, and we're out there promoting it all the time.
Can I just say here that the End of Life Choice Society is very proud to say that the organisation, the Alliance of Doulas, to which Teresa belongs and of which she is now chair, is an organisational member of our society, and we carry their logo on the End of Life Choice Society's website.
And vice versa. We're good friends. We're supporting each other.
Good friends, and hopefully
life.
we will, introduce each other in that way.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things also about VSED that we've touched on and is that it's people have a legal right to it. And I think that really it's not, a lot of people don't know about it, obviously. And I think as it's not as similar to assisted dying or MAID, and that it is something that is a process that has been brought into law. It is really just our human right to be allowed to refuse any kind of intervention in our lives, any kind of medical or support, and that it is our right to refuse food and fluids. You cannot force a person to eat or drink. And yes, like I first knew about VSED with one of my very first clients who approached me. She was a lady who was living with lots of underlying illnesses, and she did not want to be resuscitated, and she wanted to know that she could have support if she chose VSED at some stage on her journey in the future. So I had to do a lot of research. It was about 3 years ago in my very early days working as a doula. So I had to do a lot of research, and I went and read a book by a lady called Phyllis Schachter called Choosing to Die, which I would recommend for people to read because it's amazing. It's a woman who supported her husband through this. And And that lady is actually still out there living her best life, and she knows that if her health declines more in the future, she can call me, and we have a plan together. So that's how I first heard of it. And after that, about 6 months after that, I got called to a home to meet a lady and her daughter. This lady was 95 years old. She had had a fall the year before, and she had been a very active person in her community, even at 95. She was just amazing. And she was fed up. Like, since the fall, her mobility had got worse and worse, and she knew that things weren't going to get better. They were only going to go downhill as she aged further. She applied for assisted dying here, which was legal at the time, but she was declined because she didn't fulfill the criteria, which Anne, you mentioned before, of having an illness which would take her life within 6 months, because she didn't have cancer and she didn't have motor neuron disease or anything like that. She just was declining in health to the point where she felt that her life was not bearable anymore. So she chose to undergo VSED. So I have had experience with that. I walked beside her on that journey for the whole 10 days that it took her to die. And I can talk more about that if you like. But she was of sound mind as well. I have not had experience working with someone with dementia. So just wanted to point that out as well.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning the length of time that it took, Treza, because I should have said that VSED as a process can take longer than that. It can take a couple of weeks, maybe a bit more if the person is in better health. And my understanding is that it's not the hunger that's the problem, it's the thirst, of course. Thirst builds up, but I understand that there are also techniques that a carer, including obviously an end-of-life doula, can employ to abate that thirst so that it is comfortable and bearable for the person. Is that right?
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that, you said, somebody said it's can be a grim process. My experience was that it was not, that it was a very comfortable and straightforward and calm and peaceful process for this lady.
Yeah, because it was assisted by you.
Well,
because
I think
it was assisted by you.
Yeah, probably, Anne, thank you. But also because we spent a lot of time preparing, and I think one of the things that causes me a little bit of concern around the concept of working with someone who has dementia to undergo this process is that the reason it was like it was for this lady is that she was very determined. She had made her mind up. She had been very clear with all concerned about what she was doing, including her GP, who was on board to help us through this process. When she got towards the end, hospice also came on board to help us, which was also imperative because, her body started to undergo the normal dying process, obviously, in the last days of her life. And that's, in the community, that's where our hospices spend a lot of their time supporting patients to die at home. So we were under hospice care as well. So it wasn't just me, it was all of us working as a team, and also her daughter. So between her daughter and I, and her friends in the beginning, when she was being very, very social in the first sort of 5 days of this journey, she always had someone with her because you can't leave someone alone during this process because they get weaker and weaker, obviously naturally. She had written letters to her doctor which spoke of her sadness and decline in joy in her life. Like, it was really clear that she'd had a wonderful life at 95. She was proud of all she'd achieved. She'd done everything she needed to. Her health was declining and she wanted to go. She was ready. And because she had applied for assisted dying and been declined, it was all very well, written everywhere. It was very well documented about her wish. So it was very clear that she was not being coerced. I didn't come in and say, hey, have you thought of VSED? She approached me. She had heard about it and she had researched it as well. And I gave her the book to read, which she found very helpful. We made a date and she started to kind of reduce her food intake a little bit leading up to that date, but also was really aware that she was not going to be eating, so she was having her favorite foods and things like that. And on that morning that she decided to stop eating and drinking, I just basically kind of moved into the house and stayed with them pretty much for the whole time, because I was helping a lot at night so that her daughter could go to work during the day. So yeah, I'm not sure how much detail you want me to go into, but certainly she was very calm. She had lots of visitors and was very social for the first few days. She just got, just slowly weaker and less mobile. We bought in a commode. And in the end, when she was bedbound for the last days of her life and just doing the normal things a person does when they die, going in and out of consciousness, having her terminal agitation and things like that, we just dealt with that in the way we normally would with a person who's dying. But she never had any pain. Not until right near the end, she actually had a tooth that must have been causing her grief because she was very anxious about this tooth. But otherwise, physically, she had pretty much no pain. A little bit of anxiety, but that is natural as well when you're in those last days of life. And we just managed her symptoms as we went, did her personal cares with her together. She had her best friend came every day to help with her cares and help look after her. And actually, I have to say, it was a really beautiful process. She told me that after a couple of days, the hunger kind of went off her. She didn't feel as hungry anymore. And I think I read that your organs kind of all start working together once your body isn't receiving any food, and that they actually release the hormones that are kind of like the love drug. So you actually get a bit of a buzz after a while, and it helps keep you going. So I think that the hunger kind of disappeared, Anne, as you mentioned. And the thing she found the hardest was the thirst and the dehydration. And we did lots of things to help with that. I had a little spray bottle. She was like a little bird, and she wanted, and when her mouth was dry, we put a little bit of spray in so she wasn't swallowing the water. And really good mouth cares, cleaning her teeth when we could, moisturizing her lips, and as she went more and more into the dying phase, just really doing what we normally do for people for mouth cares was one of the most important things. Eye drops for her eyes. I had a humidifier in the room, which we had on quite a bit to kind of moisten the air a little bit, so that when she was breathing, the air was a little bit moist for her. Lovely washes, putting her feet in water, massaging her hands and feet, lovely moisturizers on her skin. Things like that really helped a lot through the process. I'm not saying that it would always be as peaceful and as easy. I don't know, because I think it would be different with everybody. And I don't think it would be an easy thing to do. I think you would have to be a very, very determined person to undertake this.
I think that all the literature I've read on VSED says the same, Treza, that it's good if the person is extremely determined. Lots of preparation and lots of what ifs have to be discussed before you even start. Like, what if I beg my family for water? Will they agree, or will they walk away from me? Very hard for family to do, or even a carer to do. It's good that in your case.
A good point, Anne.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a really important point that everybody in the house has to be on board. You can't have people coming in saying, "You're crazy, what are you doing?" Everybody has to be on board. And that took a little bit of time as well with her son. He didn't really understand why we were doing this. So that took a lot of very, very tender conversations.
I can really see the value of a doula in that scenario, because you have that professional experience of managing family relationships and understanding of oncoming death. Treza, to skip to the dementia situation,
Yeah.
You and I talked about this before this recording, and there are circumstances under which you and probably most doulas would and would not involve themselves in helping a person suffering with dementia to VSED. I think for you, if I'm correct, the issue would be that you would need to do this while the person was still mentally competent. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about your ethical views around helping somebody who is mentally competent versus helping somebody who is in their final stages and may simply have left an advance directive saying, in this circumstance, I want help?
Okay. I watched the webinar with David Talmore that you did, Peter, and Dr. Tanya Dawes. So I learned quite a bit about that because I know in Canada, MAID is legal for someone who has left an advance directive. So that is not the case in New Zealand. And of course,
just in the province of Quebec. Sorry, just to correct you.
Oh, is it?
Only in
Yeah,
the province of Quebec. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Anne. But VSED is a totally different ballgame, you know. And my role as a doula and being non-judgmental, I'm willing to help people along their journey for whatever it is they decide they want to do, as long as it's legal, obviously. But I think with dementia, first of all, you know, being mentally competent. My mother has dementia, and you know, it's a very slow process. And you are living with dementia for quite a long time when you are still actually competent and able to make decisions. It's just that you have this disease which kind of comes in and out and boggles your mind as it kind of advances. And so I think drawing the line between mental competency and not in a dementia sufferer would be difficult. That would be my first thing. And Dr. Dawes was talking about that point in your journey of dementia where they had a name for it. I can't. Peter, can you remember what they called it?
I think you just said like 10 minutes to midnight.
10 minutes to midnight. That was it. Yeah, they talked about
Exactly.
10 minutes to midnight, which is a very apt description, actually. But I'm not sure how you determine midnight either. Because it is such a gradual disease and because people do go in and out of it so much. So, and I think to undertake VSED, if you were determined to do so and you knew that you had dementia, I think you would need to do it fairly early on in the process. Because all the other side of it, apart from actually trying to determine when midnight is the person's determination and ability to go through this process. And for example, my lady I had recorded her on my phone telling me what she wanted to do, and then I recorded her again telling herself what she wanted to do. You know, don't give up. This is what you want. Keep at it. You can do this. You know, you actually are telling us you want to eat, but you really don't. And so I had that in my back pocket. We never needed it. But even if a person with dementia goes through those steps and does all that planning and documents everything and has everybody on board, I think it would be very difficult to try and support the person when they're going in and out of mental competency potentially, and we can't really tell whether they really mean it or not. Don't know. It's not that I wouldn't want to support someone through this, but my gut feeling is that it would be extremely difficult.
Yes, I can see the difficulties from both points of view, Treza. One is that as they go in and out of mental competence, they also go in and out of determination. So they lose some of their determination, and extreme determination is required for this. So, and then of course there's the ethical questions, and nobody wants to be helping somebody to die if they doubt if they have the slightest doubt that the person themselves doesn't understand what they're asking for when they're saying, yes, I do want to die. And that is why I think the uptake of assisted dying or MAID or voluntary assisted dying or whatever you call it in Netherlands and Belgium, where, for 2 decades, assisted death has been available via advance directive, the uptake is extremely small because doctors don't like to do it unless the person is fully on board. So to get back to a situation of dementia, I know that there are numbers of different types of dementia, and one of the commonest is Alzheimer's, which apparently has 7 stages, which people go in and out of, as you clearly say, Treza. So very difficult to say, right, we finished stage 1, we are now in stage 2. It's not like that. There's a backwards and forwards all the time. But we do definitely know that stages 6 and 7, the person has lost mental competence. So no one could assist a person with VSED anyway, under ethical principles, when they're in stages 6 and 7. I know that some of the Canadian doctors do assist with MAID with individuals who have dementia up to stage 5, provided they're competent to the end. But it would be safer really to ask for assistance in stages 1, 2, and 3, which is when the person least wants to say goodbye to life because they still have much life ahead of them. And you, as an end-of-life doula, you might think to yourself, why? You've still got so much life ahead of you. So it would be difficult for family to reconcile themselves. So
yeah, I think I mean, as a doula, I have been in that situation where someone's been talking to me about some choices like that, and of course in my mind I think, gosh, but you do. In my mind I think, well, gosh, you're pretty lively, and I think you've got a lot of joy to still get out of your life, but it's not up to me. I would never say that to a person, but I think you're right, and I think, and for a family looking on, and of course no one wants their loved one to die, or to be or not mentally competent. Like, the whole thing is very difficult for families. But looking on and thinking, my mum's still pretty lively and she's still enjoying lots of family things, and we go out all the time, and she's all still really good. I don't want her to stop eating and drinking so that she dies. I think it would be a really difficult situation.
Yeah, so to get back to our potential situation, the person would need to be extremely determined. The family would need to be on board. It would need to be in early stages for the doula, if a doula is going to accompany the person, to feel ethically responsible about it. It's a relief to hear you say that you, at least as a doula, are non-judgmental, and I assume that's what all doulas are.
That's
By
right.
virtue of their occupation, that's what they swear to be.
Very
But there would
important.
also need to be some documents in place, I would imagine. What would they be from a doula's point of view?
Well, I think it's one of the tools that I use all the time with the people that I work with is an advanced care plan, where a person has sat down and shared with me what's important to them in their life, what they want for their health if something untoward happens, whether they would want to be resuscitated if they're living with a disease, and what they want for their death and beyond. And part of that advanced care plan is a legal page, which is called Advanced Directive, which you've mentioned, Anne. And there's all forms of advanced directives. I know the End of Life Choice Society has one, which is actually a really good document as well. So you would have to have the advanced directive carefully discussed and thought through with the person and their family, and signed by the doctor, and on the person's records all over the place, wherever you can put them. I think you would also, I think one of the most important things when we're dealing with these kind of issues is having the right conversations. You know, a lot of people are afraid to talk about death. And I think by just hold, as doulas, we hold space to sort of try and draw out what a person's fears are and why they're making their decisions and what's important to them. So a lot of this would come from some very sort of deep and careful, tender conversations with people. But also writing a letter, maybe writing to their family, writing to their doctor, or just making some kind of personal statement would be good so that, like if anything happens and there's any questions around it, that you've got something in writing and a little video. I mentioned before, a video of them talking about why they're wanting to do it and why it's important to them and why they, and that it is totally their choice to do this.
Yes.
Those kind of things are really important, I think, to have up front before you start the journey.
Mm.
And that just reminds everybody. And it's really important that everybody who's on board understands that this person has a right to make this choice. And, she's making it now while she's competent. This is something she wants to do. She doesn't want to enter this decline and end up bedridden and not knowing anybody and not being able to communicate to anybody. It is her choice, and we need to support that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So a lot of preparatory work, extreme determination, if it's going to be with dementia, go very early. And that means finding a doula early on and starting to talk to your doula early on, even before you've made your final decision to end or not end your life with VSED.
Mm.
So is that right? Have we left anything out, Treza?
Yeah, I think there's not many doulas around, but doulas can work remotely as well. So, if people around the world are thinking of doing this, they can always find someone on the end of the phone to talk to as well. Because if you've got really good support from your family and they understand what you're doing, or even if a doula can sit and have this conversation even with the family sometimes, even if they can't be there physically, we could help guide a family through these kind of things as well and help them from afar. Often as doulas, I'm working with the family and not with the actual person, which would obviously be different in the situation of VSED or supporting someone through the assisted dying process. Then I'm working very much with the person who's dying. But sometimes we're supporting families to support the person because they're the ones that need the encouragement and the confidence. Because we can all do this. We looked after our sick and dying for centuries in our communities, and we do need to go back to that. So I just wanted to point out that if there isn't a doula nearby, pick up the phone and try and ring one, or if not, find me and we'll see if we can find you somebody.
That's a very kind invitation, Treza. My final question to you is, if the circumstances were right and a person who has been diagnosed with a dementia approached you about VSED, do you think you would consider it?
Yes, I would. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
one of the things, it's not like we just start working with someone willy-nilly. Like a doula should go in to meet their person and find out where they're at on their journey. And that first conversation is really important to have a connection with the person, to know that you're going to be able to trust each other. And within that first conversation, I would be able to suss out the situation. Why are you wanting to do this? How do you think we're going to manage it? Who's on board to help? Who's not on board? And what are the challenges going to be? And I would have to decide then, once I knew the lay of the land, as to whether I thought that I was able to support the person. I have been asked several times by people to support them on a journey that I was not comfortable with ethically. So, I do have to be very careful. These conversations and these situations are very tricky. But
I
I
can
would be
imagine.
yeah, I'd be happy to definitely always happy to talk and see how I can help and hopefully be able to. And if not, then sometimes I would have to step away and say, look, this isn't something that I can support you with.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
So one more point then for our listeners. Not only should you make contact early on with a doula, but your doula needs a fair amount of experience, because it's only with experience at this type of work that you can, in your first one or two conversations with your person, determine whether or not the circumstances would be appropriate for you to help. So that's just
Yeah.
one more point to consider. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
No, you're welcome.
Peter, is there anything that we've left uncovered in this conversation?
I've been fascinated to listen to the conversation, actually. Thank you very much, Teresa, for being so open and willing to discuss just what VSED is. And I think determination, teamwork, um, those words like stood out to me. And without those things, I think probably VSED will fail every time. I think you need to have a person who's absolutely committed to the process and a team around them that helps them on that process for sure. In terms of linking it to dementia, I agree with you. It's hugely difficult. I think someone needs to really be in the very early stages, like mild cognitive impairment, I think, as Anne said, like in the very early stages, because how do you determine if someone has capacity? Well, you determine that by talking to them and listening to them and and hearing the same thing from them over a period of time. And obviously, dementia robs someone of that, so um, that is difficult, but not impossible. I think it's not impossible. Um,
So I think we've covered the field pretty well. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for the opportunity of mentioning the End of Life Choice Society for any New Zealander who might be watching the webinar but not be familiar with us. We are online, and our advanced directive forms are online, available to anybody who wants to print them out to cover other circumstances.
Lovely. Thanks, Anne. And I'd just like to also thank my beautiful lady who passed away 2 years ago next month. She was very brave and beautiful and brought a lot to my life as well. And as doulas, as a doula working in this space, I am always very privileged with the people that I work with and the opportunity to be alongside them when they pass from this life. And her daughter kindly gave me permission to be able to share this information with others. So I just wanted to thank them most sincerely as well for giving us this experience and this opportunity, which may help others.
Teresa, I can thank you as well for sharing the story with us. It was heartening to hear that families can come together and support someone like that at the end of their life, and something I would hope for too, for sure. So,
Thanks.
Anne, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed today, and we will certainly put the links to End of Life Choice Society of New Zealand with this webinar, and Teresa to Swan Song as well. So we'll make sure that people can get in touch with you if they've got any questions and follow up.
Lovely. Thanks, Peter.
Okay, thank you very
Cool.
much to both of you.
Great work.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.